Okay, we're doing this. We're doing this. There's no turning back now. The camera's rolling. Hi. For those who don't know me, my name is Eli Wolbrom, and this is Nava, Mrs. Wolbrom, Rabbi Wolbrom. We come to you live from Ramat Beit Shemesh. We don't have a beautiful studio or fancy lighting or fancy cameras, but we do have the greatest backdrop that we could have. So welcome to our porch, or our Mirpeset. Should we start a series called Mirpeset Musings? Okay. Anyway, so Nava and I and our family made Aliyah about 4.5 years ago from New York, from Staten Island to Ramat Beit Shemesh. And we have 22-year-old twins who were 18 when we moved, and a 12-year-old girl who was 8. This past Matzah Shabbos, Meaningful People from Meaningful Minute released a debate, and I'm air quoting, between Rabbi Elchanan Shoff from LA and Michoel Weichbrod from Eretz Yisroel over here. It was a very interesting topic. Kudos to Nafi Gordon for addressing that topic and dedicating a whole podcast to the topic of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. And we watched it a number of times, and we have lots of comments on it, coming from the perspective of a family that lived in New York for decades, a family that moved to Eretz Yisrael coming up 5 years. And I just think that I want to give a bit of a voice to the hundreds of thousands of people that do live here. I shared some comments on my WhatsApp status, and it went crazy. Probably 100 people from Eretz Yisrael over the last 24 hours commented saying, "I can't believe he said that. I can't believe he didn't say this. What about this? What about that?" And it's just been very active. So we have a lot to say on the topic. And with all respect, of course, to both Michoel and Rabbi Shoff, we just wanted to kind of throw in our 2 cents to give perspective to those that may one day consider making Aliyah, who are actively considering making Aliyah. Certainly those who made Aliyah and may have been offended by some of the things that were said or not said. And really just to get it off our chest, I think as well. Right? Make sense?
Yes.
Good intro? Okay.
Yes.
We're rookies. We're not, I'm a keyboard warrior behind my phone. I don't really go on camera, so this is...
And I just whisper in his ear, so the keyboard warrior is whatever I say.
Yes, so bear that in mind and forgive the lack of professionalism. Okay, what else? All right, so before we, we're going to try and do actually like response style, if I can figure out how to do it, where we'll figure out how to get a clip of the debate, and then Nava and I will respond, or maybe just me responding if I continue to hog the mic. So and we'll go back and forth. I don't know how to do like the fancy window screen, so if anybody's out there that wants to help for our next one,
Put it over here.
Put it over, yeah, if you can like just make it float here and have the words go here. We don't know how to do that. But that's I think our intention. And the truth is, it could probably be like 4 hours if we truly wanted to say everything we wanted to, but we know that's not possible. So maybe we'll make a series out of it, or maybe someone will want to do a series on it. Okay, so before I guess we go to the response and the back and forth, I wanted to sort of just state something that I think should have been said at the onset of the debate, or even if not, at some point during the debate. And I think this is a very important piece of context that I feel very strongly about. And once this context is laid out, I think going through the debate, yes, Aliyah, not Aliyah, back and forth, all the good questions, I think need to be addressed through that lens. And that's just my opinion of it. So if you just give me a moment, my main issue, I think, with the whole yes, Eretz Yisrael, not Eretz Yisrael, mitzvah, kiyum mitzvah, optional, all those things, we can discuss all that after. But the most important thing that needs to be, I think, in every observant Jew's mind, is that the baseline, the status quo, the ground zero, is that Eretz Yisrael is a place that we're supposed to be in. We're supposed to live there. Maybe we can't, and maybe it's not right for everybody. But the idea of Eretz Yisrael being exceptionally important to the Jewish people and to Hashem for us, that's really the baseline. As an example, on Pesach, we cannot eat chametz. Very black and white. We can't eat chametz. What about kitnios? What about gebruks or not gebruks? What about for kids? What about little crumbs? You can go back and forth and ask the Rav, and there could be different minhagim about it, different customs, different chumras. But the baseline is you don't eat chametz on Pesach. Same thing with Shabbos. Same thing with everything on Yom Kippur. We don't eat on Yom Kippur. We refrain from 5 things. That's the baseline. That's the status quo. If there's an issue, if a woman is pregnant, if a man is not feeling well, a baby, a nursing mother, etc., okay, then there's something to be discussed. But there's never a question whether or not we're allowed to eat or do any of the other 4 things on Yom Kippur. So I don't know the exact number. I saw somewhere 750. I happen to think it's more. But I don't believe there's a topic in the entire Torah, that's Tanakh, including Torah Shabbat Peh, that is discussed more than Eretz Yisrael. This starting from Bereshis, the very first Rashi on the Parsha. Rashi asks, why do we start with Bereshis and not the first mitzvah? And he goes right into it, so that the nations of the world, when they claim that the Canaan were here first, or that it's Eretz Yisrael is not ours, boom, Hashem made the world, He's the owner, He can give it to whomever He wants. Throughout every single Chumash, clearly through Tanakh, through the Gemaras, everything is about Eretz Yisrael. It's just constantly being praised upon. There's constantly brachos about it. There's constantly warnings if you can't live here, if you don't keep the Torah over here. Everything is about Eretz Yisrael. It's the most talked about topic. I don't think there's anything even close. Maybe like the laws of judges, karbanos. I don't think there's anything close to Eretz Yisrael. It's just over and over and over. When you come to the land, and you're going to get this, and you're going to get that. Everything. Shema is packed with Eretz Yisrael. Shema Esrei is packed with Eretz Yisrael. It's just everything's about Eretz Yisrael. So there's a reason for that. I'm not going to sit here and start quoting all of the sources that say that living in Eretz Yisrael is, required, or certainly a big mitzvah, certainly something that we should do everything in our power to do. Anybody that lives here that's passionate about the topic is very well versed in this, as am I. And for the most part, I'm going to try and stay away from that. No promises. But there's a reason everyone has commented on it. There's very, very few, less than 5 that I can think of big names that say you should not live in Eretz Yisrael now. That would be a very extreme position, and perhaps at Das Yachid, we don't, I'm not considering that position. By and large, everyone else acknowledges it's a massive mitzvah. This is something that we should do. And I think before we get into the Rav Moshe, didn't he, all that, it's important that everybody in Bnei Yisrael is aware that this is what we're supposed to be. This is where we're supposed to be. The fact that this idea is not taught in yeshiva and people aren't aware, like, okay, I should be in Eretz Yisrael, and it's a goal. Since that's not the case, anybody who's preaching to move to Eretz Yisrael for the right reasons is constantly fighting an uphill battle, because it's not a value. And I think that's really the biggest issue. If the debate would revolve around the idea of, do you think that the mitzvah of Eretz Yisrael and the hashkafa of Eretz Yisrael, what comes along with it, I'm not talking about Medina, I'm talking about army, none of the controversial stuff, nothing in the Torah is controversial. If that would be just driven home in yeshiva, in school, in shul, in all these areas, I think then when someone comes to the topic of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, they can look at the pros and the cons through that lens, like very pragmatically. But not only does somebody who's advocating for Aliyah have to fight the pragmatic battle, there's an entire spiritual battle they have to also fight. And that to me is crazy. It's crazy to me that the typical Jew, myself included, by the way, once upon a time, is not aware that this is a massive, massive value. It's the most talked about mitzvah and lifestyle in the entire Torah, from start to finish. So that's just some initial thoughts. Do you have anything to say on that? Any comments?
I was worried about having to talk, but I just have to sit here,
no,
so
that's
fine. I just thought it was important to say that I think that both people in the debate do know that and felt that way. I wish it was said and asked so that both people could say that that's where they stand, because I think they definitely do. Oh yeah,
Rabbi Shoff professed his love, and you see it. There's no question about it. Michoel for sure, but Rabbi Shoff 100% clearly loves Eretz Yisrael. He comes here with his family. It means a lot to him. He mentioned in the video that he cries when he goes home. I completely believe him. I really, really do. Our issues, I guess, were not on a personal level with Rabbi Shoff, more so that he's a dynamic speaker, and thousands of people have watched this video, and really the impact that those comments are. But of course, Rabbi Shoff, I'm referring to Klal Yisrael as a
right. That's why I think it would be a good thing to have said that in the beginning, so that everyone watching can see that they both agree on that. That's not a controversial thing, or something that only Michoel held. That Rabbi Shoff also holds that the ideal is to be here.
Yeah.
Now, what are the logistics?
Right. So
once you, right for everyone at this immediately or at this time, whatever. I think the premise of the debate almost got off. It was like the first question was, should 100% of people move to Eretz Yisrael? And then it never really got off that.
Right. The first question should really have been, should anybody move to Eretz Yisrael? So that the topic, the mitzvah, the importance and why it's important, the hashkafa of it, all the things that the Torah speaks about it. It's really the most talked about topic. It just is. Right. So yeah, I think that, and this way, once there's a national, an international agreement within Klal Yisrael that it is an important place to live in, we're supposed to be there, and the Torah does not stop talking about it. Now let's discuss heterim for not being here, heterim for being here. What do we have to sacrifice? What do we not have to sacrifice? But as long as that initial, baseline ground zero is not set, people are listening to it going, I wasn't even going to move there anyway. Now I'm for sure not moving there.
Right. I also think besides the fact that it started off as should 100% of people move here, it very quickly went to the very rare instances where it's obviously not.
Yeah, I think the first thing was, what if somebody's dying of cancer? How do we get there?
It quickly went on a very defensive, instead of discussing, instead of having a real discussion, which I think it's time to have. I think it quickly went more to debate an easy win of the obvious answer that someone can't move. As an aside, it's extremely cold, so if I'm a little bit shivering.
Now let's talk bad about Eretz Yisrael. To me, the cold is amazing.
It's wonderful. Just my body can't handle the current weather.
Right. Okay.
Just to start off, and I guess, Michoel, I'll start with you. We put out this film in the summer called Homeless, and we went around speaking about the fact that Jews are being settled in America, and we are building our infrastructures, our shul, our bati midrashim. It seems like we're here for the long haul, and we're prepared to be here for the long haul. What is your take on that?
Okay, let's jump into the response part of this video. I just want to say we highly recommend that everybody goes and watches the full video on the Meaningful People YouTube channel. We're not going to play the entire video. I know a lot of response videos, they'll play the entire video and stop it by each point. This video will be long enough, so we're not going to do that, but you should watch the entire thing. There are many things that Michoel said and Rabbi Shoff said that were very good points and very strong. Michoel had some really excellent points that I think kind of got lost a little bit, but rather than play it and then say how great it is, just you'll know when you hear it. So let's just jump right in. So Nachi's opening question referenced his Tisha B'Av documentary, which sort of touched on this culture in the U.S. of maybe getting a little bit too comfortable over there, planting there, setting up for the long haul and all that. And then the question kind of went right to, should everybody make aliyah? So I just want to comment on one thing, and we could do 1,000 videos on this topic. But when weighing whether or not it's a good thing or not a good thing for children to move here and live here, I think the culture of the United States and this idea of planting for the long haul and building and more, I think that and what that does to children and what that does to the adults and the parents goes on one side of the Eretz Yisroel debate. So on the one hand, maybe there's risks for kids, maybe there's not. We'll talk about that. But whether there is or there isn't, the flip side is that I argue strongly that having children grow up in a culture of building and more with no prospect or no idea or goal whatsoever to ever come here. The idea of Mashiach is almost a scary thing for people over there. They just keep building more and bigger. So I think having kids grow up in that kind of a culture is a big problem, and perhaps one of the reasons why someone should move here. The debate on the debate between Michoel and Rabbi Shoff didn't touch on any of that, so I won't. But that's definitely, when you're weighing should we or shouldn't we, I'll just say that that's a huge part of it. Not having kids have to grow up with that materialism and Jones's mentality, which really is very prevalent there. Okay.
So Michoel, you believe that every Jew that's living in America should be living in Israel.
Should do everything in their power to move to Eretz Yisrael. I agree and understand that it's not physically possible for every single person per se to move to Eretz Yisrael, but I would say for 90 to 95% of people, it is a realistic option and they should.
Rabbi Shoff, what's your response to that?
Okay, so first of all, thank you, Michoel. I think you said what you needed to say eloquently and clearly, and I don't know, like Nachi said, like you said, I don't know how much. I think that disagreeing might be a nuance if we disagree at all. But I first want to say this. I want to just tell you a little bit about myself so you understand where I'm coming from. When I got married to my wife, we had the privilege of living in Eretz Yisroel for 7 years. We moved back to Chutz La'aretz for a number of reasons. I come with my children every summer for 1 month. We spend a month in Yerushalayim.
Okay, so Nachi's question was effectively, should every single person in Chutz La'aretz or the U.S. move to Eretz Yisrael? And Michoel started off by saying, ideally everyone who can should, and we wholeheartedly agree. If you can move, you should move. I think the Torah clearly aligns with that as well. There may be Das Yachid that says you shouldn't move here. We're not dealing with that. What I would correct by Michoel, I think, his 95%. I don't agree that it's 95%. I also don't agree that it's 90%. I have no idea what that number is. I don't think 9 out of 10 Jews have the ability to move, whatever that entails, whatever's going on in their life. I think 9 out of 10 is very, very high. I just don't need to put a number. I think that 100% of the people that are able to move, all things considered, or many things considered, should move. And I think that 100% of people who can't move for real reasons shouldn't move. I don't know what that number is, but it's not 95%.
The point is that if we're making it an important thing to move, that whoever is able to would want to, and would push themselves to.
Right. So I think Michoel wanted to say that, but then he realized, I can't say 100% because what about the ones who can't? So he just said 95, and Rabbi Shoff kind of pounced on that.
We didn't get to that yet.
We didn't get to that yet.
Foreshadowing.
I think it's a little important not to harp on it for a long time, but just to know. This is the first time hearing Rabbi Shoff's background. I didn't know, but Rabbi Shoff says that he got married and lived in Eretz Yisrael. I didn't hear him say it, but my assumption is that it's Yerushalayim. That's where he said that that's where he visits every year for a month, which is really nice with his kids. Unbelievable chinuch. But it's clear that he got married and stayed in Yerushalayim, which is what people do. I think that's very important because his 7 years of experience, which is a lot of years, it's more. He's lived there more than we have, but he lived in Yerushalayim, and Yerushalayim is a bit of an anomaly. It's
a long time ago.
It's a very long time ago, right? He said he has a daughter in 12th grade, so we're gonna figure whatever. I don't know, whatever the case is. It was a while ago, and he lived in Yerushalayim. Now Yerushalayim is the holiest city in the world, but it's also a somewhat complicated transition to move from your typical community, your typical from community in the U.S. to move right into Yerushalayim. Either someone needs to have very substantial means, or really be on the all-in on Eretz Yisrael. Don't need a soft landing. Don't need.
I think the percentage of people that make Aliyah and move to Yerushalayim is very
right.
low, unless they're a single person. Or retirees. I think do.
I would say most people that don't make Aliyah to Yerushalayim, and I think that's very, very key to this entire conversation regarding kids, regarding dangers and all that, regarding just acclimation, schools, all that. I think it's very, very important.
I think for a time they were. I think it was popular for a time. But
I think 25 years ago, people were moving to Har Nof. That was the place. Before Rabbi Shemesh existed, Har Nof was the place, and that looked very different than the way Rabbi Shemesh and many other cities here look. So it's just important to know from a context perspective. Rabbi Shoff is speaking from anecdotal experience and things that he's heard, but he did not live where families that make Aliyah generally move to.
But I want to respond. I don't know who you're talking to. In other words, you made a statement that 90 to 95% of the people should be in Eretz Yisrael. So would you say this? I assume you'll say this is the 5%. But if there's somebody who lives in Eretz Yisrael, they made Aliyah, they love it, and their child has cancer, And for the best cancer doctor, they come to Los Angeles and they stay by the Horowitz, Lev LA, Achnasos Archim, a magnificent organization that takes care of people when they're in the most difficult times. And they come and the person's sitting by the child's hospital bed. And so you turn to them and say, don't you know about Aliyah? So the guy will look at you and say, no, I do. But you may not understand that this is where God needs me to be.
So I think this question was kind of made the conversation into less of a, it kind of went off the rails here. I don't think that the question was intellectually honest, I don't see the point in asking this rare case. I just didn't really understand. Michoel, we didn't play Michel's response. Michoel obviously said that that's an exception. There are a lot of exceptions that are not that crazy. But yeah, I just thought that was, I didn't really understand the point of bringing this extreme. I can find you an extreme example.
Yeah, to me that seemed like a debate tactic. You knew that Michoel was going to say no, you shouldn't make Aliyah, so you get that soundbite. I don't think there's anybody on earth that's going to say no, too bad, die, or Daven Hashem. It's just an absurd question. So to me that kind of.
Yeah, foreshadowing. It kind of went in more in this direction of like the gotcha answers.
And this was supposed to be really a debate or a discussion or debate on is it good or is it bad. But Rabbi Shoff trying to get Michoel to admit that there was a scenario where someone shouldn't move because life or death. I mean, nobody on earth would say too bad. So
I believe, I'll speak for myself. I have a daughter in 12th grade. I have a daughter in 10th grade. I have a daughter in 8th grade. I have a son in 5th grade. Let's talk about the bigger kids. They're happy. They're adjusted. They're learning Torah. People who uproot their children midway very, very often have very disastrous consequences.
So this is the
I'm going to be quiet and let you.
This is the argument that everyone uses. And really, it definitely got me very fired up, as it does when it's used. I actually went and tried to find the statistics of kids in Israel, or I looked for Beit Shemesh just because that's where I live, so I could really dive into that information. There has never, ever been a study of kids who have gone off the derech in Israel, or specifically Beit Shemesh. And so, because of that, no one has the authority to say that very, very often kids go off the derech. Because unless you're making up the information or you're using anecdotal proof, so just I know a bunch of people whose kids went off the derech, I can show you a bunch of people whose kids did not go off the derech. So that's not a debate tactic. This is basically just making up information. And at this point, not this debate, but how many times this is brought up that if you move to Israel, your kids will go off the derech. I think it's like gaslighting of like
it is.
Crazy proportions. It's like for those who don't know what gaslighting is, it's like, oh, maybe we do have a real issue in our community. Like,
this is something like this is like Candace Owens type of tactic, just saying the same lie over and over. Where of course the accuser believes that, and the people that are listening to them or turn to them for influence, to be influenced, believe them. But even the people themselves start to believe it. Like 1 minute, like are kids going off the derech everywhere?
Right. I feel like we have to respond to like, oh, our kids are going off the derech, and then we have to justify that it's still worth it to make aliyah even though your kids go off the derech. But wait, let's bring it back. Are kids going off the derech more often than kids in America? First of all, we didn't play this clip, but Rav Shoff does say that he doesn't think that kids are going off the derech more in Israel than they are, I think he said, in Baltimore. So I'm not sure why we're harping on this. If you make aliyah, your kids are very, very likely to go off the derech. I think that's a complete it's a smear of Eretz Yisroel. I think it's borders on Lashon Hara of Eretz Yisroel.
It's mostly shame of not only the land. We have to be very careful about saying things like that. I use the term Maragal speak. I know you won't, but I do. And I mean, you're effectively saying to the hundreds of thousands of people who keep, I mean, we're probably over, what do we have, like 8 million Jews here now, whatever, maybe 1.5 to 2 million Jews or maybe more that keep the Torah completely, that your kids are off the derech. I mean, it's...
Or no matter what you do, your kids are going to go off the derech.
I lived in New York for 40 years. 40 years. I lived here for almost 5. I lived there for 40 years. I've had kids in my class go off the derech. I have kids in my people in my extended family go off the derech, from Muncie, from Lakewood, from Brooklyn, from Toms River, from Baltimore, from LA, from Miami, from Chicago, from Cleveland. I mean, I don't know what the numbers are, like you said. It's certainly not much more here. It's certainly not less.
Right. I don't know what the numbers are because there's no study. I can tell you what I see, but no one knows the numbers. So when people are telling you they do know the numbers and people do go off the derech more in Eretz Yisrael, then we need to question where are you getting that information from. I don't know if that's true.
Right.
And they don't. Okay, there's not a data to stand on because there's been no study ever done.
And also,
I just want to say one thing. I don't think Rav Shoff is saying this knowing that it's incorrect. I think this argument has been said so many times. I don't know the genesis of it. It could be it was a more observable issue 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, and it's just said over and over and over again, and now became a talking point that people think is actually true. I think it really does a disservice. It's
a huge disservice. It's simply not true. And of the children who do go through that challenge over here, nothing says that they wouldn't have if they stayed.
Yes.
Very often there's a problem at home, and picking up and leaving is a great idea. Take the kid out of the environment. So now the kid, went off the derech over here. Not that this is, a selling point per se, but I can tell you that there's no land on earth that does more kirov than in Eretz Yisrael. There isn't a land on earth where children come back and are closer to tshuva than Eretz Yisrael. There's actual crazy, amazing data of, I think, more than 50% of children under or people under 18 in Eretz Yisrael, I'm talking Chilon and everyone, are now keeping Shabbos, at least in some form, over 50%. The number in the United States is going this way, and the number in Eretz Yisrael is shooting this way. Now, we don't need to decide who has more from people where it's more challenging, but this idea that coming here, you're on your back foot, and your children are probably going to go off the derech, which is effectively what Rabbi Shoff said. He did say that. I agree with you.
Multiple times. Sorry for foreshadowing.
Yeah, I don't think he did it intentionally. I just think it's what people are taught, what people are trained.
It's just believes.
Yeah.
People that don't have parnasa and struggle from depression and all.
So Rabbi Shoff mentioned, he kind of said it faster, maybe because we were on 2x. He said the word depression, we're referring to people over here, maybe parnasa issues. The debate didn't really touch on parnasa and that whole thing. It was more high level, so we won't talk about parnasa, but he did say the word depression, and I think for people listening and they start hearing the word Eretz Yisrael and they hear the word depression, that's also something that's concerning. I'll say, from living here for 4.5 years, yeah, some people do struggle with parnasa, some people struggle mightily in all ways. I can tell you from a depression perspective. Now, we had 2.5 years already, whatever it is, of big wars, death, some very, very troubling things. I can tell you I've never been anywhere where people are less depressed, where people are genuinely happy, they're fulfilled. I don't know the name of the study, but it's well known that people in Israel, and this is not just observant people, this is everyone. I think Israel's like a top 5, maybe top 4, top 8.
Number 2.
Okay, I don't remember exactly, but it's an internationally known fact that people that live here are happy and the reason is it's not because we're rich here. We're not. It's not because what is it? It's because it's a holy place to live and people live with purpose here. So it is difficult. In general, life is difficult everywhere. But I didn't. Rabbi Shoff mentioned the word depression, and I wouldn't use that adjective to describe the people of Eretz Yisrael. We're not depressed. We're resilient, and we're very, very happy.
Being that, as I understand it from all the Gedolei HaPoskim that I follow, Rabbi Feinstein and so many others, that it's a mitzvah kiyumis. That means living in Eretz Yisrael, according to, and this is important for us to sort of agree with, that whatever your take is on the sugya, right, the great poskim that the mainstream Orthodox community follows understands that if you live in the land of Israel, you're fulfilling a mitzvah, but that you don't, it's not an obligation. There are those who disagree, but that is not the mainstream. That's not what they're...
Michoel, do you agree with that?
With Moshe Feinstein's psak?
Yeah.
I am absolutely not in a position to disagree, but he's for the most part, lone opinion on that, but yeah.
Okay, so I don't mean to, I stridently disagree with that idea in the sense that practically the person everyone who's living in Lakewood and Bnei Brak, those personalities, I think we can agree that the people that they turn to for psak halacha, even Rav Chaim Kanievsky, who would encourage people to make aliyah very aggressively, did not say that it's a chiyuv mitam a mitzvah chiyuvis. He didn't say it's an obligation. He didn't say that. As far as I'm aware, that is not the mainstream practice. The same person we'd ask for Hilchos Shabbos, Hilchos Gittin, Hilchos everything else. So that being said, what that says to me when something's a mitzvah chiyuvis, and the great Rav Shneur Burton, who wrote the Sefer Aretz Ha'Reka, and was really one of the Rosh HaMedabrim in the subject, he says when something is a mitzvah chiyuvis, and I fully agree with this, it means I have to consider my responsibilities in serving God, and then how does this fit with them? This cannot be something that says, I need to learn, I need to daven, I have these responsibilities of how I need to raise my children, etc. All that I'll figure out later. The first thing is aliyah.
Okay, this is everyone's favorite topic on Eretz Yisrael. This is the probably number one talking point when talking about psak and chiyuv. Nice idea, mitzvah, not mitzvah, it's Rav Moshe Zatzal. First thing I want to correct is Michoel. Michoel did make a mistake, not because he didn't know, probably just because camera, that's just how it goes. I'm nervous as it is, and I'm not live, and I'm not even being interviewed. Rav Moshe is not a das yachad when it comes to whether or not living in Eretz Yisrael is a chiyuv d'oraisa. There are shitos that there are people who say that it is a d'oraisa. The Ramban is most famously on Eretz Yisrael known for being the one that says that living in Eretz Yisrael is a mitzvah saseh d'oraisa, meaning that if you don't live in Eretz Yisrael, it's on the level of not wearing tefillin or not making kiddush on Shabbos. It's a d'oraisa level, one of the 248 positive mitzvahs. So Rav Moshe did not hold that it was, and Michoel said that Michoel was going back and forth. He is, he isn't. The answer is he is not. What did Rav Moshe say? It's the most reference thing. So unless there's some hidden saver that I'm not aware of, or some source that's being that's hidden from me, Rav Moshe was asked a question about a completely different topic regarding husband and wife, and at the very tail end of it, he addresses this idea of, is living in Eretz Yisrael a chiyuv, or is it just a mitzvah, meaning that it's a good thing to do if you can, but you don't have to. So Rav Moshe starts off addressing this topic. He says simply like this. He says, regarding the debate between the Ramban, whom I just told you holds that it's a mitzvah saseh d'oraisa that you have to do, or Rabbi Chaim, who's one of the Balei Tosas, he's quoted in the Masechtas Ksubas Daf Kuf Yud and Kuf Yud Aleph, and that sugya over there regarding Eretz Yisrael. Everybody who lives here, knows those juicy Ksubas Gemaras. So Rabbi Chaim, one of the Balei Tosas, says there, he says that because living in Eretz Yisrael because it can be challenging to keep the mitzvahs tuliyas ba'aretz, which means the agricultural mitzvahs, meiser, truma, etc., because it's difficult to keep them, it's better if somebody doesn't live here. Because as we know, as it says throughout the Torah, if you live in Eretz Yisrael and you don't keep the Torah, certainly not intentionally, the land's going to spit you out. It's very, very bad. So this was written in the 1100s, whatever it is, over 900 years ago, and that's what Rabbi Chaim says. So off of that, so you have the Ramban, who's also a Rishon, and then you have Rabbi Chaim, who says, no, you don't have to live there because it's too difficult to. Rav Moshe says, I agree with Rabbi Chaim. It's not a mitzvah that you must do. It's not one of the mitzvahs aseh d'oraisas, but he doesn't say that it's not a mitzvah. Of course he says it's a mitzvah, and he says, and he effectively concludes, because it's this tiny little piece, he says, if you are going to live there, you best be sure that you keep Rabbi Yochaim's warnings, in mind. Make sure you're able to keep those mitzvahs. Rav Moshe does not say, if your kid's going to go off the derech, don't move there. If he might go off the derech, don't move there. If Parnasa is difficult, don't move there. If the army is drafting kids that are 4 years old, don't move there. He doesn't say anything about the Medina. He doesn't say anything about any of that. All he says is that it's not a chiyav d'oraisa, and that that Rabbi Chaim's concerns regarding it being difficult to keep the mitzvahs tliyas ba'aretz, the agricultural mitzvahs, you shouldn't move there if you're not going to be able to keep them. One other point. Rav Moshe wrote this in 1951, I believe, 51, 52. So 4 years after the modern state of Israel was created, and today it's 2025. The country does not look the way it did 4 years after it was initiated by those who started it, and that is an enormous point that's neglected across the board. I'm not saying Rav Moshe Psak, I'm not saying it doesn't hold true today. I would never say that. Psak is eternal unless someone comes and says otherwise. But it's very important to know that Rav Moshe wrote this 4 years after the state of Israel was created, and all he said was that it's not a chiyuv. And if you are going to live here, make sure you can keep the agricultural mitzvahs, which are the most important parts of living in Eretz Yisroel. So just wrapping up for now the part on Rav Moshe, one has to ask themselves, can they, in 2025, can they keep the agricultural mitzvahs in Eretz Yisrael? And being that I live here, and in fact we actually moved here during Shemitah, I could say overwhelmingly, yes, you can. It's just part of life. It's not difficult. It's beautiful. There's infinite options. I love seeing, a hashgacha on a product, and it's not just kosher, it's not just kosher or mahadran. It talks about everything. It talks about truma. It talks about ma'aser. Yeah, I mean, these are things that we didn't really pay attention to. Only when those alerts came out, like, oh my gosh, Costco has avocados from Israel, whatever it may be.
We'll do a different podcast on that.
We'll do So I mean, it's not difficult to keep the mitzvahs here at all.
Those chazals that you're quoting, on every single one of them, we're not Karaites. So in other words, when there's a line somewhere, we don't take. We learn it with the Mefarshim. We learn. So in other words, what does it mean when the Sifri that's quoted by, I think, the Ramban you were citing, maybe in Bechukosai, that the mitzvos that a person does in Chutz La'aretz are like for practice? It's like you practice when you're back in Eretz Yisrael. We have throughout Chazal very, very strong statements about all kinds of subjects. It says that speaking Lashon Hara is as significant as the 3 cardinal sins. And the Shiloh Jewish saying Yeshua says anybody who really thinks that saying a negative comment about someone else is equivalent to murdering and raping and worshiping idols is off the wall. But our sages were highlighting there's some aspect and angle of that behavior that has the same level, you understand? And the same exact thing is true when Chazal say something like what we just said, that there's no value to the mitzvahs and chutz la'aretz except as practice. Or when they say, I'm not sure the specific quote you were quoting about a maidservant. That one I don't remember where that Chazal is, but I've heard people say stories like that from B'Shem of Cook or someone, that even the simple farmer in Eretz Yisrael, is greater than the Gadol Ador. So I don't accept that anybody's greater than Moshe Rabbeinu, who's Michoel Shabbos in Eretz Yisrael, even though he didn't make it. I don't accept that. If there's something about their experience, in other words, if there is such a Chazal that I'm mechuyev to explain, then I would understand it like I understand almost every other context, where it means in some special, unique way, that simpleton who lives in Eretz Yisrael has a certain beautiful advantage that even a big Gadol in Chutz La'aretz doesn't have. That I would agree with.
Okay, so I didn't think the debate was going to go in the direction of crediting or discrediting real Torah sources. I didn't think that's what the nature of this discussion was going to be. I thought it was going to be about the practicalities, how pragmatic it is to move things like kids going off the derech and parasa. That's what I thought it was going to be. But Rabbi Shoff seemed, Rabbi Shoff quoted quite a bunch of stuff here, and only because he sort of pushed it aside, I'm going to have to address it. So Rabbi Shoff mentioned the Sifri and this idea of mitzvahs are practiced. We're not supposed to take it literal, and then he brought up Lashon Hara and how we see from there. So there's some very significant Torah sources on the importance of living here, and especially regarding the mitzvahs. I think that discrediting it and saying that that's not literal, and then going on a whole pilpul because by Lashon Hara it's not literal, is making up your own Torah. It's one thing if you want to say it's a das yachad, it's not actionable, we don't hold of it, or it doesn't matter. That's fine. But to discredit very, very credible sources, the Sifri was written by a group of Tanaim who wrote Mishnayos. Rashbi, Rosh Bar Yochai, was the leader of the authors of the Sifri. So this is effectively the Rashbi's holding. Rashbi, the one where the Tana who hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of Yidden come from the United States and abroad every single Lag BaOmer to come daven, the same one. The Sifri says very clearly that the mitzvahs were created to be done in Eretz Yisrael to the extent that the mitzvahs say, because you still got to keep everything, or you have to refrain from averos everywhere. That's not practice. But he says straight out that the mitzvahs were created to be done in Eretz Yisrael, to the extent that when they're done outside of Eretz Yisrael, it's really only practice, so that when you do get here, you'll know what to do, because here it needs to be done, and it needs to be done the right way. That's not medrash, that's not fluff, that's not a misconstruing of what he said. That is what he says. The Ramban quotes it. The Ramban is not quoting fluffy stuff. These are Rishonim quoting Tanaim effectively. So I think that if you're going to bring it up and then discount it, then you're picking and choosing. And I don't know anybody that says it's not literal. It could be we say we don't hold that way, or it doesn't matter. Either it is or it isn't. But to belittle very, very real sources, in my opinion, is absolutely wrong. So I just wanted to comment on that. And we mentioned the Ramban. Ramban holds it's a mitzvah sasei doraisa. He says that not coming here is like ki'ilu spitting in Hashem's face. He's giving us the present, tells us to come, and we're not coming here. Perhaps the Ramban is a das yachid on that. We know that Gedolim throughout history kind of felt the same way. So we don't have to hold.
Right? The Vilna Gaon,
the Vilna Gaon, the Gra, the Chavetz Chaim, the Chassam Sofer, names that people don't associate with Eretz Yisrael. There's an endless list of people who say that is where you have to go. Get there, no matter what. Just get there. Just get there. Why they didn't come? Because they lived 200, 700, 600 years ago, and it wasn't as simple as jumping on a plane and transferring, your job from there to here or working remote. It's just a different time. So we can get into debate with
whether you hold that or not, or that's fine, but you can't say that it's not.
You can't say that you can't say it's not MS and we're not taking it literal, and then take Rav Moshe and Yar Bayavar on what Rav Moshe says when that was actually just like a tangential piece to what he's saying. Like you can't pick and choose when it's shot and when it's literal and when it's really esoteric. It doesn't work that way.
Final thing really that sets us apart, I think, is yes, if it was understood by the Gedolei HaPoskim that we follow for everything else, that this is a chiyuv d'oraisa, you're obligated today to pick up and move to Eretz Yisrael. Rav Moshe Feinstein should have done it. The Lubavitch Rebbe was wrong. He should have done it. These people should have picked up and gone to Eretz Yisrael. If that is your orientation, then I would say yes, you go there and you figure out your chinuch issues afterwards. But if it's not the case, which I think the overwhelming majority of serious Jews who are learning Torah and mitzvahs, and they don't come to it from, I've been reading a lot of Tanakh, and my feelings seem to lead me to believe, Yash Koyach, on those wonderful feelings. When I read an eye for an eye, it makes me think this, but then I look at Chazal and they tell me something else. So in other words, if my orientation is that what is the Torah demanding of me, and the final thing, like you said, many people come up with what you sound like silly excuses and yes, those people are all wrong on any subject. If they're not keeping Shabbos or Kashrus or learning Torah or davening properly or living in Eretz Yisrael based on silly, intellectually dishonest reasons, so I'm not talking about them. And those people should reconsider their whole orientation towards Yiddishkeit.
So this is very similar to the previous point, just a long continuation. We wanted to break it up. I think over here is another example of Rabbi Shoff kind of doubling down on this discounting of what I view as real Torah sources and Torah, hashkafa on the idea of Eretz Yisrael that, as we said in the very, very beginning, is really just not discussed, in the United States. Belittling the Tanakh and more so discounting that there's hundreds of thousands, if not over 1 million people, Talmidei Chachamim learning here. Eretz Yisrael learning is the highest learning in the world. Lakewood is amazing. They learn. There's no question about it. But the people who learn in Eretz Yisrael are gifted. It's a different level here. To say that their belief that this is where they're supposed to live and how much Mesiras Nefesh they have to live here on much less than people have, even the Kolok people have in the U.S. To say that that's on the shoulders of fluffy, beautiful, emotional Tanakh is nonsense. It's nonsense. Rabbanim here, up and down the coast, from east to west, from river to sea, believe that this is where we're supposed to be.
And they'll say it.
And they'll say it, absolutely. Rabbi Leff is very harif on needing to on living here.
Chaim
Kanievsky, we mentioned it 100 times, Michoel mentioned it many times. Chaim Kanievsky was fire on living here. He didn't understand that they wouldn't live here. Did he hold it to Doraisa? If you asked him, he said yes. So on that idea. The Chazon Ish was enormous on it. Are you looking for whether or not they consider it a Doraisa or not? I don't know that that's how we live our life. First of all, there's the Rabbanans. We listen to Chazal, we listen to direction, we listen to Hashkafa, we listen to Musar. They all believe that people should live here. They didn't let people leave here. They couldn't understand when people left here. So whether or not it's a doraisa or not, it doesn't matter. They believe that's where Jews should be. So I think discounting them and discounting all of the Rabbanim over here and all the Rabbanim in the U.S. that want to be here and that wanted to be here, the ones from Europe that tried to come here, discounting them and saying, oh, Rav Moshe didn't come, so it must not be important, is nonsense. It's also a chutzpah to Rav Moshe. You don't think Rav Moshe Feinstein wanted to come to Eretz Yisrael? Of course he wanted to come to Eretz Yisrael. He lived 80, 90 years ago, 100 years ago. It was a different time here. He was the Gadol Adar. He rebuilt with Rav Aaron and so forth the United States. That was his job. And the same thing with the Lubavitch Rebbe.
We can't compare ourselves to these people. They obviously have an enormous role to play in Chutz La'aretz. Like, it's not even, you can't make any comparison.
Right. It's like saying the Ramban didn't think Eretz Yisrael was important because he only came here at the end of his life. Really. The Ramban is the source on Eretz Yisrael being a Doraisa. Circumstances are what they are. Us who have jobs in the US and can pick up and move is not the same thing as a Gadol Adar who has, whatever it is, millions of people that he has to watch over. And the same thing for Chabad. Lubavitch Rebbe, there was a different avoda then. How many people was he Makarov? And if he would have come here, like you said, he wouldn't have been able to leave. That was his avoda. But we're not talking about the Gadol. We're talking about everybody else that could come here now.
Let me just try to explain it conceptually. I'm a black hat Orthodox Jew. That's different than Haredi Israeli, right? It's like American black hatter. Middle of the road, just as an example of how that's different than Haredi. If my daughter would marry a guy who would sit in Kollel for 10 years and then go become a lawyer, I wouldn't be heartbroken that, right? It's not an ason nora, right? As opposed to maybe in Bnei Brak, it's a little different. So I'm living in let's say I would say, listen, I cannot tell you how much I admire the Skver Rebbe and his Gadlus. And the Skver Hasidim is such a beautiful thing. I like their tunes. I like everything about them. I'm moving to Skver. But let me tell you something. I'm not walking on opposite sides of the street of my wife. And I'm not, right? I'm going to live in that community, but I'm sending my kids to school. But like, my wife's not going to shave her head. We're not going to really be Skver. I'm going to daven, etc. I'm going to do it my way. So we know that every one of us would know, like, that is not wise. Your children are going to be growing up in these two worlds. It doesn't fit so well. In the United States, I can tell you, and there's a book by Faranak Margulies called Off the Derech, which is an extremely in-depth research into this subject. There's a pattern that overwhelmingly works for an American black hatter. If he sends his children into that system, and I can only speak for the system that I'm involved in, there's good shalom bayis at home. Husband and wife get along, create a peaceful home, and meet the emotional needs of their children. It's a very high percentage. It's way in the high 90s that those children stay connected and from and happy and healthy in the Orthodox world. For Americans who move to Israel, who are part of the black hat world, again, I can only speak to that world that I know, there is no pattern that I can find that explains, here's how you join this world. It's like almost like moving to Square for an American non-chassid. It's a beautiful community. I admire it. There's many things I share in common with them, but it becomes extremely challenging for an American to find their place. For a person who doesn't have a place to fit, and you see this in Eretz Yisroel, people come with their children and they don't have a healthy environment that meets with their beliefs and their needs and their family. They don't have that. And this causes enormous turmoil for children.
I think a lot of people I think a lot of people listening right now who live in Ramat Beit Shemesh or Shari Chesed, they'd take offense to that.
I don't think they would. I think they can look at the teenagers that are walking around their neighborhood. They can look at the disconnect that exists with so many children. I can look at the Rabbeim I had in Eretz Yisrael, so many of whom, or I shouldn't say my personal Rabbeim, but people that I would have asked for advice on raising children. And there wasn't a pattern even with their own children. There wasn't such a clear pattern of like, if you follow this basic model and you do your work on your Shalom Bayis, on your this and on your that, I didn't see that. And for that reason, I didn't understand. Hashem gave me these children. He gave me a responsibility to raise them.
In this clip, Shoff is speaking as if places like Ramat Beit Shemesh don't exist. I don't know if that's just from not knowing or I don't know if he just said it, I'm not sure, but that's to say that there's no place for American yeshivish people
no
to
path.
come. No path.
I don't know if you could see it. Actually, you definitely could see it, but right behind us is Ramat Beit Shemesh Gimel, which is, I don't know, I'm not going to say an identical copy. It's not identical because it's missing a lot of the negative parts of it, but Lakewood, that's your Lakewood right there. There's definitely a path. There's a path in Ramat Beit Shemesh Aleph, there's Ramat Beit Shemesh Gimel, and Dalet, and Hey.
Just numbers-wise, Ramat Beit Shemesh is, there's about 150,000 people in Ramat Beit Shemesh. Close to 100% of them are from. Of the 150,000, 30 to 40% of those people are either Olim themselves or second generation, so their parents made Aliyah.
Just to clarify, when we say Ramat Beit Shemesh, because not 100% are, like, there's certain, like Ramat Beit Shemesh Hey, which a lot of people do make Aliyah to, there are some Chilonim over there.
Some,
right,
I'm saying percentage-wise, almost 100%. There are basically no cars on the street on Shabbos. We walk in the middle of the street, kids play without supervision in the middle of the street.
I just want somebody to say, what are you talking about? I was in Hey on my pilot trip, and I saw someone out from
here, almost 100%, almost. I would say it's in the high 90s percent.
Plus all the off the dark hits.
Plus all the off the dark hits. They're still keeping Shabbos and stuff. They're still off the dark. Wait, I lost my train of thought now. Yeah, to say that there's no place for a yeshivish American person here is.
Rabbi Shoff actually used the word that's a perfect word. He said there's no path.
So Rabbi Shoff actually, this is a different point. Rabbi Shoff was like he was referencing a specific Kirov book. I think it's like Psychology and Kirov, which I looked up. I have not read it. What's actually funny is he said that there's no. I don't think he said it in this clip, so sorry, foreshadowing. But he said that there's no clear path like there is in this book for kids in America. There's no clear path like that for kids in Israel. And the author of this book actually wrote a follow-up, I think 10 years after, it's more recent, for the Israeli system, which is funny. So I guess there is a clear path. I don't know how that, I do want to read the book. I don't know how that path, how those pointers, what I saw from the summaries that I could get, I don't know why that can't be adapted to Israel. It's more like family, supporting your children and making sure they're loved and helping them in school,
nothing
like that. I don't know why it's not
nothing in the air over here prevents us from loving our children.
But if you don't understand that there's a place like Ramat Beit Shemesh, I know it's not the only place, but it is the overwhelming choice for.
Yeah, I mean, there's Modi'in, there's Efrat, there's
Renana,
there's
choice for people, and that's what we know. So that's why I'm speaking to it. But if you don't know that igrests, then I guess you don't realize that there are schools that you can send your children.
But the point of Ramat Beit Shemesh, the point where everyone harps on Ramat Beit Shemesh and why real estate is nuts here, is because it is the path for Olim, for Yeshiva Sholem, for Hasidic Sholem, for Modak Sholem, all types. That is what Ramat Beit Shemesh is. It is the path. You can go elsewhere afterwards, but it's a soft landing.
And it's constantly bettering itself. Like there are new schools that are opening. There are older schools that have brought in Olim coordinators or people just to adapt for the growing Olim community to realize what they need and what support they need in order to give them the best possible chance of succeeding.
And it's not in its infancy.
It's not in its infancy, but it really is. It's really growing.
Constantly evolving.
You can't compare today to 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
Definitely not.
And I think a lot of the points that Shoff brought up were my Rebbeim's kids or people who I would ask shalos to, their kids, like those kids are probably our age.
25 years ago in Yerushalayim, it didn't look the way it does in Ramat Beit Shemesh Aleph or Hey or Gimel.
Yeah,
there are very Israeli schools for those who are not Olim, but there are American style schools where the Torah level is elite and they're speaking English and Hebrew and combining it all, and they're not enforcing tests, and they just make it so easy for people. It's difficult. It is hard to move for adults too. But the whole goal of it is to be a welcoming path and to integrate. And they don't look at tests. They don't look at that type of stuff. It's all about how can we make the kids feel better? How can we make the kids integrate more? How can we help them learn the culture? I mean, Ramat Beit Shemesh is the path.
Right. Some people don't want that, and they think it's better to throw their kids into a more Israeli system. And kids are successful. You have to know your kid. This is a little bit off topic, but you have to know your kid and what you think is best for them. But if you want that soft landing, we definitely exist.
Yeah.
And somebody telling me a story from Rav Kook that he heard at the mikveh about a guy, that doesn't work for me. You know what I mean?
You mentioned Rav Kook a few times. I just want to clarify. I'm not going to mention Rav Kook one time in this entire interview. I've never mentioned Rav Kook, I don't think, in any of my videos.
Rav Kook's svarim are an enormous influence on me and my life. But like when somebody's going to quote, you understand what I'm saying? Telling me a maisa from a guy that he heard kli shlishi that happened behind closed doors and no one was in there. I can't base my Yiddishkeit off of those things.
Just to clarify really one more time, the only things I ever quoted so far was Midrashim, Gemaras, and Tanakh. That's the only thing I for the most part, plan on quoting. So.
Hello again, we're back. This time the sun is out. It's less cold, Baruch Hashem. Change of clothing. Actually, Nava told me that I should have done the first part in a white shirt to build credibility to our target audience, but I'm a sweatshirt guy. And so, like, in any good marriage, we compromised and we were the white sweatshirt. So hopefully it touches on the sweatshirt crowd, the white shirt crowd. But don't take me too seriously here. Rabbi Shoff used some very, what I call colorful language to describe some of the sources that Michoel mentioned and some of the sources that are out there. Rabbi Shoff used terms like kli shlishi regarding like how far removed from reality those sources are. Mikveh talk. I don't know where he gets off doing that. I don't know how one can discount Psukim in the Torah, the Tanakh, Gemara, Rishonim. Throughout the rest of the debate, Rabbi Shoff brings up the Avnei Nezer, conveniently leaves out the Chassam Sofer at the exact same time. So I think one pattern that was very clear, more so from this point on, is Rabbi Shoff picking and choosing things that fit his narrative of it's probably best not to be here, and neglecting some extremely real, not esoteric, not Baal Shem Tov bedtime stories, some real sources on the hashkafa around and the mitzvah around living in Eretz Yisroel. I think it's absolutely devastating. I think Rabbi Shoff loses credibility on that, to be honest with you. It's only if you want to say, yes, those sources are real and they're actionable and we have to deal with them, but X, Y, and Z. But to mock them, to call them mikveh talk, to call it kli shlishi, to say we don't paskin that way, we don't care about them, they're just fluffy, feel good stuff, is a major disservice to everybody living in Eretz Yisrael, people who are considering living in Eretz Yisrael, and to the ones who wrote these. These are not fluffy medrash, for Thursday night Leil Shishi type stuff. This is real poskim on Rishonim, Achronim, Gemara, and so on and so forth. And I think that doing that really was very telling as to whether or not Rabbi Shoff has an agenda. That was just my takeaway.
I also, one other point I thought was important, I took it and felt like it was almost like a cheap shot at Michoel, that Rabbi Shoff is obviously a Rav and is a seasoned debater, and Michoel is, although he really had amazing points and I think he really held his own, he's not a Rav, he's an average Joe, as you could say.
Yeah,
he's very talented. I thought it was like a cheap shot at him by saying oh, that's not how we learn that. That's esoteric, that's feel good. Michoel's literally quoting Tanakh, and you're saying, oh, that's just a feel good source. That's not how we read that. And I don't think that was true. I'm not a rabbi myself, but I think he was quoting.
Yeah, I think this was a pivotal piece, which is why we chose to respond to it. I think over here, exactly to your point, Nava. I think here Rabbi Shoff asserted the fact that he's a rabbi, presumably with smicha, and he's a rav of the shul, and he's a very gifted debater. You could see that from here and any of the videos that he's on. And Michoel is just a yid. I think Michoel held his own beyond, which we'll say for the end. But I think Rabbi Shoff sort of said, no, hold on. These are the sources that are real. The sources you have are just bedtime stories. Listen to me. And I think Michoel came with real good stuff and was unfairly discounted by Rabbi Shoff just arbitrarily deciding that his stuff is real and Michel's are, fake medrash.
Let me just explain. In other words, when a person says the Shloh HaKadosh said something and the Ramban said something, right? So when you say the Chazon Ish, yes, in other words, that would be very impactful. It would be very impactful if the Chazon Ish had an opinion that everyone in Chutz La'aretz needs to make Aliyah and move to Eretz Yisrael. I don't believe he said that. I don't believe he said that. I'm not sure what you're saying from Rav Ovadia, but like the Talmidim of Rav Ovadia, the major Talmidei Chachamim that exist in Chutz La'aretz, the big Sfardi Rosh Yeshivas and Gedolei Yisrael, they don't all pick up and move. They don't all say that. That's not what they paskin. So for someone to be able to sort of cherry pick major positions and say, this is what I hold like, Rav Nachum Rabinovich, and I hold like, these are legitimate to poskim. But what about the other ones? Those are the people that we're connected to. Those are our Rabbeim.
Who holds that living in Eretz Yisrael is not a mitzvah in the Torah?
Nobody holds it's not a mitzvah that I'm aware of, that it's not at all a mitzvah. But like the Avnei Nezer says, that if you're going to be living in an environment that's less conducive to growth, you're not supposed to go. He says that in Tafnun Daled and Yoreh De'ah. I'm just saying, like, there are major players.
All right, so this is really a continuation of the last piece, but it was just a little bit further down in the video. This is a classic example of what I'm speaking about. Rabbi Shoff, first off, quotes the Avnei Nezer, 1800s, I don't know the exact year, and he says that Avnei Nezer says if a place is very difficult to live, you don't have to live there. Okay, first off, where does it say that it's difficult to live here? I don't know where it says that. Any real source on whether or not Eretz Yisrael should or should not be lived in from even a Kiyumist perspective really comes from Rabbeinu Chaim, which is one of the Balei Tosas on Gemara Ksubas, and he says that we spoke about this before, since keeping the mitzvahs ba'aretz is not possible in the year 1100, and you have to keep that, it's better not to live there. That's the difficulties he's talking about. So when Avnei Nezer says, if a place is difficult to live in, you don't live there, who says that refers to maybe your kid going off the derech, maybe pronounced as hard? I don't know. But the Avnei Nezer says that. We're not arguing with the Avnei Nezer. However, the Chassam Sofer, who lived pretty much the exact same time, does anyone know that the Chassam Sofer says that Rabbeinu Chaim's psak, that the mitzvahs ba'aretz are so important, and in the year 1100 it's so difficult to keep, so therefore don't live there? Do you know the Chassam Sofer says it's no longer relevant? This was in the 1800s. The Avnei Nezer, we don't like what the Chassam Sofer says. Sefer Yikarim says the same exact thing. and so on and so forth. The Rak of Emden, I can quote a million. The Meshech Chachma, there's endless sources of people who are fire on living here. So I'm not saying they say it's a mitzvah asay dorais like the Ramban, but if you're picking the Avnei Nezer, and with the other side of your mouth you're saying, oh Michoel, no, your sources are esoteric and dreamy, and he's telling Michoel that he's picking and choosing, but yet the Avnei Nezer are here, and then you have the Chassam Sofer, who, I guarantee you, Rabbi Shoff holds the Chassam Sofer. That's not good. Why didn't he mention the Chassam Sofer? Why is he only mentioning ones that fit this narrative? So it's only if you don't want to bring up any of them, and let's just talk about practicality. Can you live here? Okay, but if you start picking sources and then saying that the ones that he says are fake and mikvah talk, you're being intellectually dishonest to the viewership. And I think anybody who really wants to know the sugya and who holds what, they should really do it and not take what they hear from the real video, because Rabbi Shoff is just literally cherry picking what works for him and what doesn't. And one more thing, because Rabbi Shoff mentioned the Chazon Ish. Obviously, we know anybody who lives here or who actually studied the sugya knows that Chazon Ish and Rav Chaim, who didn't move without following the Chazon Ish for the most part, was absolute fire on Eretz Yisroel. Did he say it's a mitzvah d'oraisa to do it? He was living here, he was dealing with people over here. He wasn't giving psak on what the people of the United States in 1930, 1940, whatever it is, was doing. But let's just play it out. Let's play devil's advocate for a second. If the Chazon Ish, if Rav Chaim got up there one day and said everybody should move to Eretz Yisroel, what do you think would happen? Would people start booking tickets? Would they? Would homes in Tom's River go up for sale? Would the Lakewood housing market all of a sudden get flooded with homes available? Would people leave the 5 towns? Would Baltimore? Would LA? Rabbi Shoff, would you? No, you'd say, the Chazon Ish is a Das Yachid, he's very Charif at Eretz Yisrael, but we have Ramosha. So don't pick and choose people who didn't get up and make a declaration and say you must move here right now, and say since they didn't do that, we don't have to move. Because if they would have done it, you still wouldn't have moved. Let's be honest.
Is the will of Hashem not to live in Eretz Yisrael, Rabbi Shoff?
The will of Hashem for some people is, and for some people isn't. And it says that in Sefer Yechezkel. It's very clear in chapter 29, where Hashem says, now you're in Galus, I want you to build homes, I want you to build infrastructure. Hashem is very clear about that, because it's an arukahi, right? Which on one sense it means it's long, and I think the Malbim over there says arucha can also mean a healing.
Well, recording tonight. I want to quote some tonight also.
Okay, listen, no, in other words, I'm not looking to prove something to you. I'm looking to.
If you want to quote Yechezkel, I can bring you a lot of stuff from Yechezkel. In Yechezkel, he says the greatest abomination is that we lived amongst the nations.
I feel like when you're attempting to stridently prove something from these sources. So I'm telling you that people who are sitting and learning, people that are real Talmidei Chachamim. So it may be the case that Rav Chaim Kanievsky had one position, and Rav Moshe and the majority, in my opinion, of people that are paskening today for the Orthodox world, the black hat world, right, for that world, they are paskening, understanding that it's a mitzvah kiyumis. And that's a huge difference, because I need to then consider, when the mitzvah is an obligation, I don't consider one way or the other, I do what it says. But when the mitzvah is something that you can fulfill, if you choose, then you have to see how does that fit with your other responsibilities.
All right, this here for me personally, I think is a top 3, rage bait type of comment by Rabbi Shoff. I don't know how anybody who's listening to this debate, not ours, but the real one, can hear what Rabbi Shoff just said and not just shut it off or say, okay, everything he says is really not real. Rabbi Shoff starts off this piece by saying that, what do you mean? We have in Yechezkel that Hashem said, go build houses in Chutz La'aretz, right? Don't forget, throughout this entire video, throughout this entire debate, Rabbi Shoff is screaming at Michoel that you can't paskin halacha or take anything from Tanakh because it's very fluffy. So with this part of his mouth, he quotes Yechezkel, who, by the way, if you go a little bit further, Yechezkel is the Navi that talks about Geula and coming back and all of that. So I don't understand. Are we taking hadracha from Tanakh where you should keep building more and more houses, in all the cities in the U.S. today in 2025 because Yechezkel 29 says that? Or are we moving a little bit further in Yechezkel where it talks about what the third base of Mikdash is supposed to look like? Are we passing or not? And amazingly, in this very same clip, if you just go 1 minute further, which you just listened to, Rabbi Shoff tells Michoel, you can't take from Tanakh. So what was this whole argument about building houses in the U.S. from Yechezkel 29? I don't know, unless I missed something. To me, that was the most hypocritical thing he said. He contradicted his own words, and he contradicted this whole premise of don't look at Tanakh to get hadracha or halacha or anything like that.
The second part of the clip is about that because it's just a mitzvah kiyumis, you therefore need to look at everything else in your life ahead of the mitzvah to see if you should be doing it. I don't know where this comes from. I know that Rav Shoff quoted a specific sefer in the beginning, and I did go reread the sefer to see exactly where that, if that's said, and I didn't get that that's what it said. The sefer said that if it's very difficult to do something, if it's very difficult to live in Eretz Yisrael, if you can't keep the mitzvahs and you can't raise your children, there's no set what's it called?
Path?
No, chinuch system for your kids, then the argument is that you're not obligated in the mitzvah. But I think it's very hard to argue that there's no chinuch system set up in Eretz Yisrael right now, and I think it's a misuse of the sources to say that means that everything needs to be exactly perfect for me. It has to look exactly like it does in America. It has to fit exactly to guarantee, we're looking for a guarantee that our kids are not going to go off the derech. It's not enough to say this is a great place to live and the kids turn out amazingly. And yes, some kids go off the derech just like they do in America. That's not enough. I need a guarantee that my kid will not go off the derech in order for me to not be putter in the mitzvah. I don't know that source, and I would look into it if there is a source, but I don't.
From what I saw, and I saw the Rabbeinu Chaim. This Rabbeinu Chaim is vital for everybody to look into, because in Rav Moshe's tshuva on this topic, he literally starts off by saying saying. And regarding the question you asked me, whether we hold like the Ramban, or that it's a mitzvah chiyuvis, mitzvah asay d'oraisa, or like Rabbeinu Chaim. So what does Rabbeinu Chaim say? So Rabbeinu Chaim said, like I just said before, and I said much earlier in the video, that because the mitzvah is tluyas ba'aretz, that's key. That doesn't mean mitzvah of chinuch your children, mechanech your children.
Even
the mitzvah
if it's
of
any
parnasa.
mitzvah, it's not difficult to do a mitzvah.
It's not difficult. It's not difficult to do it. And I think for someone to ride their entire lives on this. One second, I do have an out if it's difficult. Like Michoel said in this video a number of times, who said that just because a mitzvah is difficult, we're not supposed to do it? Only if it's a doraisa and it's difficult, we have to do it. But if it's not a doraisa and it's a little difficult, then we don't. Like, it's just like our own mitzvah is just like mitzvah situation. Like, are we taking the mitzvah of sleeping in the sukkah and applying that across the board? Rabbi Chaim and Rav Moshe literally say in his tshuva, he says the mitzvah is tulias ba'aretz. That's talking about the agricultural mitzvahs. Rav Moshe lived when he wrote this was 1950. He could have very easily said, because the chinuch system in the state of Israel is not set up yet, you shouldn't move there because it's very difficult to do X, Y, and Z, to learn Torah, to keep Shabbos, to do all these things. Don't do there. He doesn't say that. He says if the mitzvah tulias ba'aretz cannot be done, then based on what Rabbi Chaim says, you don't need to go there. You don't need to live there. So this idea that, like, really to your point, that if it's not perfect, if it doesn't fit exactly, you don't have to do it. That's just not the Jewish way. Things are difficult. Things are expensive. A silver menorah is expensive for your son-in-law. An esrog is expensive. Making Pesach is expensive. It doesn't mean we don't do it.
Really, really agree upon is that the right way to be looking at life, and the only way to be looking at life, is about serving Hashem and doing the right thing. And unfortunately, so many of the people that hit me over the years arguing for Aliyah are people who were evidently not medactic in the mitzvahs. These are people who their wives were not dressed according to the basic standards of the Shulchan Aruch. They themselves weren't meticulous about minyan and halacha. If you start telling them, the halachas of lulav and esrog, they say, who has time for that? I'm busy making Aliyah. I don't have time for halacha. You understand? There's a lot of that.
Okay. This is number one. I think this is number one. Kids going up the derech is number two. And then what we said before regarding the Yecheskel, I think, is the third. This one here, I don't even know what to say. Rabbi Shoff just said that people he was exposed to, people that he knows that are advocating for Aliyah, are not careful with the mitzvahs. He said terms like, evidently they're not careful. They're not.
Their wives are not tznius.
Their wives are not tznius.
They don't take. He makes it seem like anything. I tell them about lulav, and they say, I don't have time for that. I'm making
I don't know. This is Motzi Shem Rav, the highest order. The people in Eretz Yisrael, the firm ones, as we're talking about.
Who else is pushing Aliyah?
Who else is pushing Aliyah?
People in Eretz Yisrael.
I mean, this is who we're talking to, right? This is who's going to listen to this podcast and who has listened and will continue to listen. We're talking about people. Right? We're talking about people whose kids are going to go off the derech. So we're talking about the firm people here. To say that the people who are urging people to come to Eretz Yisrael don't keep the Torah and aren't careful about halacha and only care about making Aliyah, that is such a violent lie. The people in Eretz Yisrael that I've been exposed to, and that's not a small amount. I live in one of the largest cities, like you said last time. It was 150,000 people here. Go to Yerushalayim. I mean, I don't think his comment even merits a response. For me to sit here and defend the way the Yidden of Eretz Yisrael, at least the 20% of us here that keep the Torah, how we keep the Torah with such precision, with such love, with such care. We don't care about Gashmias over here. To say that we only care about moving here and we don't care about the mitzvahs, I don't know how someone could say that.
I actually think that it shows that Rabbi Shoff really doesn't know what's going on here. It's almost like he's never been to Ramat Beit Shemesh or to the
or to Yerushalayim, or to Bnei Brak, or to Modi'in, or to Kiryat Sefer,
specifically
or to
most
Beitar.
People who are pushing Aliyah, I think these are usually only for the most part. I literally have no idea who he's talking about that have hit him up, that only care about that's the most important thing, only making Aliyah, and they don't keep the Torah.
How could you say that on a video?
Someone who like maybe doesn't hold to your standards of tznius, or maybe someone who has different yarmulke than you. Okay, maybe I could see that, but that someone doesn't care about the Torah and mitzvahs. Come on, I don't even know where that comes from. I don't know how you could, even if you actually think that, how could you say that on a camera? It's Motzi Shem Rav, the highest order. It just is. You're by saying that, you're just persuading people to not even consider the process, because the people that are going to be advocating are going to tell you to throw away Shabbos in order to, raise the Israeli flag on Yom Ha'atzmaut. I don't understand. It doesn't even make sense.
How could you possibly say that? There's no place on earth where keeping the Torah and learning Torah is more elite and perfect than here.
And how do you explain, can I ask you, how do you explain, this is a big question for a lot of us out there, how do you explain the Lubavitch Rebbe and Moshe Feinstein and the Satmar Rebbe?
All right, this is probably the biggest topic. I know Nachi's promo video, Rabbi Shoff says, are you saying the Satmar Rebbe and the Lubavitch Rebbe and Rav Moshe were wrong? Are you saying they made a mistake? So this is what we led in, what the promo video led with, because this is the big topic that everybody asks about. I don't know why, to be honest with you. So I'll comment on Satmar to an extent, and I'll comment on Rav Moshe, and I'll leave you to the Rebbe, because I think you're more knowledgeable on that than I am. But
he calls him the Rebbe. He doesn't.
He calls him the Rebbe. It's the Rebbe. Today's your test, Kislev, so you should know that. I don't even understand the premise of the argument. What is the question here? The question is why Rav Moshe didn't move to Eretz Yisrael? Rabbi Shoff said that his wife is a grandchild. So was it a trick question? Was he actually looking for an answer? It was a gotcha question. Yeah. It was a ridiculous question. Does he really want to know? He knows the history of Rav Moshe. He knows and I think Michoel spoke about it just a little bit. I don't know why it even needed to go there. Why again Rav Moshe now is on the witness stand of why he did or he didn't. Any God-fearing person in the United States, and really anywhere, knows that Rav Moshe needed to be in the United States back in the 50s, 40s, 30s, whatever it was, and so on and so forth, to save Yiddishkeit at the time and to replant all that which we lost during the Holocaust and start over there. Why he didn't pick up and go to Eretz Yisroel? Because Eretz Yisroel in 1948 didn't look like it did over the last 20 years. Rabbi Moshe needed to be there. How could you question why a gadol did or did not do something? I don't understand the chutzpah to do that. You want to say why Rabbi Moshe didn't promote it? Well, that's an easy question, and that's the $1 billion question that everybody asks. I get asked this question the most on my status and things like that. Why aren't the gedolim saying to go? Because what it comes down to is, number one. First of all, I just want to say, when was the last time a gadol hadar? Let's pick Rav Shmuel. Let's pick Rav Reuven Feinstein, Rav Eli Wachvogel, Shlita across the board. Why don't they get up and talk about Eretz Yisrael? I just want to know, when was the last time you heard a psak or a declaration or a hashkafa or hadracha from any of the gedolim, the real gedolei hadar? When was the last time you read anything from them? I haven't seen anything. That's not what they do. They're so high level and have to be so careful with their words that they're giving shiurim, high level shiurim. They have sub shiurim of sub shiurim with people all the way down. It's a chain. It's a chain effect almost. This is not what they do. I know for a fact that if people go to Reb Reuven and if people go to Reb Eliezer, I don't know what the Sama Rebbe would any of them now would say. I mean, I do. It's an individual case by case thing, and they're very yes, of course, obviously. Who would say no? They look at the family's situation and they know the person and they tell you, we think you should go, we think you shouldn't go. If Reb Shmuel, devil's advocate again, if Reb Shmuel would put out a press release, say everybody move, like I said before regarding the Chazon Ish, people would say, he's talking in theory, it's flowery, he's saying ideally it would be nice, and they would just turn their heads. And do you know how bad it would be for the United States if the elite Gedolei Hadar that we know of, and it's not just those two or three, there's much more, Hasidic side, the Syrian side, the Sephardi side, pick your Gadol, it doesn't matter, I'm not ranking them, but if any big one said, everybody, it's time to move, they would just turn their ear to someone else. That's what's going to happen. And if you have hundreds of thousands of Bnei Yisrael in the United States not listening to the Gedolei Hadar, that's bad news. So they don't say those types of things. When was the last time you heard a Gadol Hadar talk about drug use? Are they pro-drug use? When was the last time you heard them speak about materialism? I'm talking about the big ones, the ostentatious weddings, the kids' internet use. The Gedolei don't do that. They're in their circles. They're asked questions privately. It's really more of a grassroots thing. The Rabbanim and Shuls, they're the ones that are supposed to be talking about this idea of Eretz Yisrael, in my opinion, and this idea of To'ah Meha and coming home drunk and problems that are in families within Klal Yisrael. It's spilled down. That's how it's supposed to be. It's almost a hierarchy. It's almost like the way Moshe Rabbeinu with Yisroel set up Klal Yisrael. That's how it's supposed to be, and that is how it is. I do think that the individual shuls, the Rabbanim and the shuls across the board should be discussing this, and this is how I really started this whole video. But in the intro, is that it's not a discussion discussed, because the same thing. If you love your Tom's River, if you love Lakewood, if you love wherever you're living, and the Rav of your shul says, guys, it's time to go, we shouldn't be here, you're just going to find another shul. The same way, if you love Kiddush Club, and all of a sudden the Rav says, guys, it's a bazillion to the laning, we're done with Kiddush Club. Okay, so if you're a serious person, you'll be like, you'll clap, you'll be very, very happy. But anybody who wants Kiddush Club is just going to find another shul. So anybody who doesn't want to be here is not going to be here. The fact that the Rav says to come, they're not going to come. So that's why it ends up being a case by case basis. It takes a lot of guts for someone to get up there and stick by it and say, no, you have to move, you have to move, you have to move. I mean, there are cases, there are Rabbanim who have moved here. There's a community right outside of Ramat Beit Shemesh Aleph from New Jersey. A bunch of people are moving here. There's a big community in Baltimore that came with their Rav Tafula, and various cities started like that. But to point to the Gedolei Hadar and say, why didn't they do it, therefore I don't have to do it, is just scapegoating and really throwing the Gedolim under the bus. The Satmar Rebbe is a Das Yachid in terms of his position on Eretz Yisrael, as far as I'm concerned. I think everybody would agree with that, and I cannot answer for him, other than saying that this was, again, when the State of Israel started. It is not 2025. Do their opinions hold true now, 80 years later? I think it takes a contemporary gadol to say, you know what, the psak by Rav Moshe is probably not good anymore. I'm not saying it's not good. I'm saying in order to flip that, you would have to have a different gadol do that. I think that's the way psak works. But
I don't think the psak needs to be flipped.
It wasn't a psak. It wasn't a psak.
No, but not even if it was. Okay, it could still be a mitzvah kiyumis, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't come here.
Right.
The psak wasn't you shouldn't come here. Right. It's just that it's not a kiyumis, it's a kiyumis, and people take it, and most people haven't even looked what Rav Moshe said, and they just said Rav Moshe said you don't have to live here, but they don't even know what they're quoting, right. And they're twisting what he actually said. Yeah. To speak of the Rebbe, I'm not Chabad, but I have enough family members who are, and I think I understand his position. First of all, the Rebbe has held very, very highly of Eretz Yisrael, and like Nachi said earlier in the episode, if you watch the whole thing, that the Rebbe did not come to Eretz Yisrael because he felt like he didn't have he wouldn't have a heter to leave, and he obviously couldn't leave the entire movement in New York, so that's why he didn't come. But the Rebbe and Chabad, I think what they hold in the highest regard is gathering sparks from all over the world and bringing them to Yiddishkeit. So I don't think the Rebbe would have held that. It just doesn't seem logical to me, but we can disagree, because I'm trying to say what he would think, and I don't know what he would think. But he can't send someone to the middle of nowhere with no chinuch system. They're going to the middle of Singapore with no community and bring their whole family there in order to gather sparks. But he wouldn't hold that Eretz Yisrael has enough of a community in order to come here safely. So I don't think he didn't send people he didn't have children, but he didn't send his followers here for the reasons that you're saying, that we don't have enough built up and we don't have an adequate place for everyone here. I don't think that's what the Rebbe held at all. Just that there was what they think is most important right now in this time is gathering sparks all over the world. So that's my understanding.
I think what I walk away with is that it's not such a black and white situation, right? It's not so simple of pick up and leave and go. At the same time, it is pretty alarming or interesting that the silence on this topic in America, and how Yishuv Eretz Yisrael is not spoken about. It is not. I don't think we're machshav it enough. I don't think we applaud those who are able to make the move and go to Eretz Yisrael and live in the land and fulfill that mitzvah as much as maybe we should be. I think that it should be a conversation on everybody's mind and lips every month, every year with their family. And if they decided they can't do it, then they should decide that they can't do it. It just shouldn't be the default that you live where you live because you've always lived there.
Okay, if you got this far, we appreciate it. This was difficult for us to do, and the editing was just beyond me. Kudos to anybody who creates content and puts it together, whether you have an edit, I make them look smooth. Like, wow, I have a whole new level of respect, regardless if you're talking about food or if you're talking about fashion, or if you're talking about Eretz Yisrael, if you're talking about whatever. Just putting these videos together and making it look smooth and awesome is a skill that I think I underappreciated. So thank you for sticking with us. So just to conclude, I'm kind of going to touch on what I spoke about in the beginning. I think that the whole premise of the debate was off from the beginning. I think that it's really an absurdity, and it's so sad. Like, if I'm being honest, it makes me genuinely sad to think about the fact that those of us living here in Eretz Yisrael have to defend our choice. We have to prove that this is where one should be. When we advocate for other Yidden to come home, we have to make the case as if we're on the defense, where it should be the opposite. I think that people who don't come here should be on the defense. They should say, oh no, we can't come because X, not prove to me why I should come. I think that's such a sad story. If you learn Torah, pick your Torah. I don't care whether it's from a Litvish perspective, halakha, anything. As I said in the beginning, there's nearly 1,000 sources on Eretz Yisrael and how good it is and how amazing it is. And you know what? I live here, and I can tell you firsthand that it is amazing. Is it difficult? It's difficult everywhere. I lived in New York for 4 years, and it was difficult. It's unbelievable here. The Kedusha level is so amazing. Just seeing the evolution, even in the 4.5, 5 years that I've been here, you just see that this is a Geula-oriented land. You see the Knesset is the most observant that it's ever been, and we have a long way to go. Yidden coming home are going to impact that significantly. And I just think the Torah says it's great. People who live here say it's great. Like, are we tricking you? Like, what's our catch? Do we get money for everybody that comes here? Why would we tell you to come here if we didn't think it's great? Why would we tell you to come here if we think that your children aren't going to be, the best versions of themselves? I don't get. And it's just what I said in the beginning. The status quo should be that's where we're supposed to be. Every kid coming out of pre-1A, every kid going from 8th grade to 9th grade, and from 12th grade into base measures, and from base measures to here, it should be running through their veins. It should be such a cheshek of theirs to get to live in Eretz Yisrael. Whether it's, I wish my parents would move there already. I have a friend whose little kid, for some reason, is begging their parents to move to Eretz Yisrael. Like, every single kid should have that yearning. It shouldn't just be an esoteric idea of an eagle coming and saving you, which most kids, myself included, thought that's actually going to happen. Now, whether it is going to happen or not is not the point of this discussion, but if you're not talking in yeshivas and in shuls about actively living in Eretz Yisrael, then you have the position of a Rabbi Shoff and his listeners. One thing I want to say, because there's been so many comments on Nachi's video on YouTube. I mean, some of the comments are so crazy to me. I know you're active on YouTube, I'm not. Maybe share some of it just to give an idea of what we're seeing.
What, when people are hate comments?
Yeah, the hate comments. I mean, this is people in the US, you wouldn't even believe it. Rabbi Shoff really got the people who are there, he really validated them, and they were not shy. I mean, other than hiding behind his screen name, the things they said, I mean.
I had one, my comment was, just this whole concept that come to Rafi Chemesh, come to our wonderful schools and tell the mechanchim and the parents and the students that there's no path to Yiddishkeit here. It's a ridiculous notion. So someone said, and also tell your wildly off the derech teens. I wasn't aware I had teens that they were off the derech.
I mean, just the fact that you can say that to someone. I mean, is this the type of frum path that people in the U.S. learn from these books that Rabbi Shoff quotes? Is that someone from telling us here that, oh, you enjoy your not from teens? Is that representative of what's going on there? I don't know. And that wasn't the only comment. There were quite there must be almost 1,000 comments now. The people are talking, and I think that it's important to talk about this topic. I think the goal should be that it's something that's in schools and it's in the shuls, and whether or not you come, it doesn't matter. Like I said, 100% of the people that are able to come should come, and 100% of the people that really can come shouldn't come. When I say really can come, I'm not talking about dying of cancer. I'm talking about it's difficult for whatever real reason. Yes, we get it, and we get it.
You decide that your kid can't handle it. There are
that's
real
fine.
reasons
Yes,
not to come.
100% of those people shouldn't come.
Tooth and nail for I don't even understand what you're fighting for. It's like. To bring up these crazy stories to prove your point, this cancer thing is to prove your point that really we shouldn't move. What are you fighting for? We're all just trying to serve Hashem and bring the Gula closer, and just having to fight so hard just to be understood on a basic level. It's very frustrating.
It's frustrating. Many times
it makes me lose. I have to fight this losing. Okay, fine, just stay in Chutz. Right. But then I remember that no, we want to bring the Gula.
So that's what it is. I just wish everyone
Kiddush Hashem. I think people not coming here and fighting so hard that you shouldn't be here. It's really spitting on Hashem's face. I'm embarrassed for us.
Yes, that's what I meant. I think one key difference here that I wasn't even aware of before I moved here is this idea of, and Rabbi Shoff spoke about it from the other side. When you're outside of Eretz Yisrael and you're a really good observant Jew, it's all about my tafkid and what do I have to do? What's my job as an individual, maybe as a parent and as a spouse, but it's all about me. And over here, it's really very different. And this wasn't something I new. It's something that I realized, and I know there's tons of svarim on it because people told me, by the way, that feeling that you have, that's in all of these different svarim. Over here, you feel like you're part of the nation. It's about what's good for Am Yisrael, and I have to do my part within that. But it's about Am Yisrael. What does Hashem want for Am Yisrael? What is our goal? What is Bnei Yisrael supposed to do? What's my part in that? But I think outside of here, it's like, okay, what's my little job? I'm on here for 120 years. What do I have to accomplish? And I think when you come here, you realize that it's so much bigger than yourself. And even if it's a little bit difficult, it's okay because I'm playing my role in the big picture. The big picture is bringing the Shekhinah down and having the Beis Hamikdash, and that's really what it's about. And there's no better. Yeah, I mean, really yes. If you look at certain publications, I won't use names. They translate Gai Echad Ba'aretz one way, but if you look at any real source like the Ramchal, Sefer Yikarim, Rishonim, they say that Gai Echad Ba'aretz means that we're only considered one nation when we're on the land. Is it not my Torah?
I didn't even know that was a controversial line. I thought it was obvious.
No. If you take certain American publishers, they dafka switch it. No, it's not me. Look it up. Ramchal and who quotes the Sefer Yikarim. We're only in Am Echad when we're here, and when you are here, you feel that. Right. You do feel it. I feel like when we say the job is to our families, like I feel so disconnected. Not in a holier than thou way. Although maybe people will argue with me. Like it's so sad. Like you guys are missing the boat. Like this is where we're at. If you actually learn Tanakh, and this is a push for my program 90secondnach.com, but like if you learn it and then you live here and you see that there's certain nevuah where like the land's gonna expand and you're gonna be able to come to Yerushalayim en masse and you drive and now you see there's a new highway because they bulldozed right through a mountain and now there really is a much wider highway. It's mind blowing. It's like this nevuah is coming true. Yecheskel, the end of Yecheskel, and Yeshaya and Yirmiyah, like it all says what's going to be happening. It doesn't mean you paskin halacha. It's just facts on the ground, and we're here. We're on the ground. Look at it. This place had, and if kibbutz galuyos happening, is any doubt, there were 80,000 people here 100 years ago. Okay, there's 8 million Jews here now. How is that not kibbutz galuyos? There's no place on earth, with the exception of Las Vegas, percentage-wise, that had higher growth. How is that not kibbutz galuyos? What is that, Zionism? No, that's kibbutz galuyos. And if you want to lie to yourself and say, oh no, that's just Zionism, okay. But if you're a real God-fearing Jew and you've learned the Torah and you know the Torah and you keep your eyes open, even a little bit, you will see that it's being unfolding in front of our eyes. It doesn't matter whether you're a Tanakh guy or whether you're sitting learning Gemara all day. It's facts on the ground, and it's just so sad that half of Bnei Yisrael, half of us, don't care or don't want to come, and I think it's fight so hard to
prove that they shouldn't come.
Yeah, I feel like we're defenders of Hashem. I feel like we have to, I don't know. Anyway, we'll wrap it up here.
I feel like ending the way Michoel ends his videos because it's really that's
Chazak v'amatz.
Chazak v'amatz. I hope you all join us here soon. You should all have the ability to, the ones that want to, and those that don't should be infused with the desire to be here. To welcome Mashiach. Have a front row seat.
Yes, amen.